Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is facing questions again about his failure to disclose transactions with a Republican megadonor.
For decades, Thomas has been treated to luxury vacations by billionaire conservative donor Harlan Crow, including trips on his private jet and super yacht worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
The justice has gone with Crow to the Bohemian Grove, the exclusive California all-male retreat.
Clarence Thomas said that he was not required to disclose the trips that he and his wife took that were paid for by Republican megadonor.
A Supreme Court justice, a Republican billionaire, and the secretive Bohemian Grove. This story has it all. Clarence Thomas is only the second African-American to ever sit on the Supreme Court, and he has a very rich friend called Harlan Crow. It was revealed recently that Crow took Thomas on his private jet, private yacht, and to an exclusive and rather mysterious summer retreat. Some Democrats then want the deeply conservative justice thrown off the Supreme Court. Others say Justice Thomas has done nothing wrong and this is just a political hit job. Our guests both have strong opinions on this subject and we'll get to them in just a moment. But first, this quick reminder of how we got here.
There's been a lot of talk about Clarence Thomas in the wake of the, I think, indisputable evidence that he's on the hook for his billionaire buddy Harlan Crow.
No member of the United States Supreme Court has ever appeared clearly to break the law.
I was shocked. I've been shocked reading about Clarence Thomas.
We have a crisis at the Supreme Court.
A relationship that stretches back 3 decades to when Clarence Thomas first joined the Supreme Court. The billionaire Republican donor, Harlan Crow, has given him a taste of how the super-rich really live.
They cruised the globe on Crow's super yacht. The justice also made regular use, according to the reports, of the billionaire's private jet for free, and every summer, Thomas and his family have been staying at the billionaire's resort rent-free.
And Thomas failed to declare any of these trips. Nor did he declare the billionaire's purchase of his mother's home.
In 2014, Crow bought several properties in this quiet residential neighborhood in Savannah, Georgia, that had belonged to Clarence Thomas and his relatives, including a house where Thomas's mother was still living.
Chief Justice John Roberts must now come forward and state if he allows and is allowing this kind of very serious corruption to happen on this court.
The Chief Justice remains silent. But Thomas has responded, releasing a statement saying, "Early in my tenure at the court, I sought guidance from my colleagues and others in the judiciary and was advised that this sort of personal hospitality from close personal friends who did not have business before the court was not reportable." Some people believe it's all a smear campaign.
They want to smear him as his work gains incredible reputation for its clarity. The animus is race-based. That's why they hate Clarence Thomas. Am I correct?
So help me God.
So help me God. And he has achieved a great deal. Thomas is also just the second African American to serve on the Supreme Court, following in the footsteps of Thurgood Marshall. Both men came from humble origins.
I prefer the Walmart parking lots to the beaches and things like that. There's something normal to me about it. I come from regular stock.
Clarence Thomas's father abandoned his family when Thomas was just 2, and at the age of 7, his mother sent him to live with his grandparents. He didn't let his family instability get in the way, though. He got the chance to study law at Yale through an open admissions program for black students. While originally a firebrand black nationalist who styled himself on Malcolm X, his time at college saw him turn towards conservatism. After graduating, he worked at the Missouri Attorney General's office. 4 years later, President Ronald Reagan, no less, asked Thomas to be chair of the Equal Employment Commission.
Clarence Thomas has endured America at its worst, and he's answered with America at its best.
It was President George Bush who nominated him for the Supreme Court in 1991. Aged just 42 at the time, he had only a year's experience in the judiciary. His incredible rise was almost scuppered when a former colleague accused him of sexual harassment at his confirmation hearing.
He continued to ask me out on several occasions.
Unequivocally, uncategorically, that I deny each and every single allegation against me today.
Some people have been spreading the rumor that perhaps you're going to withdraw. What's Clarence Thomas going to do?
I'd rather die than withdraw.
He was cleared of any wrongdoing, and eventually the Senate approved Thomas by the narrowest margin in a century. Since then, he has pushed for the closest possible interpretation to the original Constitution. Ultimately, that may be why Democrats are so keen to unseat him. However, they face an almost impossible task. With the House Republican and the Senate on a knife edge, they would need a significant number of Republicans to support them. Not much chance there. Okay, let's bring in our guest now, and today we're joined by Professor Ted Shaw, who was on the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund for 26 years and has long opposed Clarence Thomas's appointment to the US Supreme Court. We also have Barry Richard, who is a former lawyer for George W. Bush and has successfully argued numerous cases before the Supreme Court. Welcome to both of you, Ted and Barry. Ted, if I can start with you, I know from my producer's notes that you've opposed Clarence Thomas for decades. You've even described him as morally compromised years ago. Do you feel vindicated by these revelations?
Well, let me say that it's not a question of vindication for me, and my focus has been on his qualifications when he was nominated. Once he was confirmed to the court, I accept the fact that he's on the court, but I've very much opposed his views and his jurisprudence since he's been on the court.
What is it about the latest revelations from ProPublica and others that makes you think that Clarence Thomas has gone completely wrong here?
Well, I think there's been a series of problems lately with Justice Thomas, or for some time. They include the latest revelations about the free trips that he's taken, the largesse from a conservative, wealthy individual, but also there has been a series of questions about his wife's role in the conservative movement, including on January 6th, and yet he has sat or participated in proceedings relevant to that. So there's a whole series of problems and questions that go back. And then originally, of course, there were the Anita Hill allegations.
Well, let's not go that far back.
Confirmation.
Yeah, let's stick with the latest episode, because, you know, what ProPublica has said is that it appears that his actions with Harlan Crow, they appear to be a violation of law, according to 4 ethics experts that they have consulted. Are you saying that he's violated the law?
No, I did not say that. He may have, but the problem is that the Supreme Court doesn't have a set of ethical rules that guides it, as do not only lower courts in the United States, but almost everyone in government. He may have violated some laws, and I think it bears more investigation.
Well, some Democrats, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, would like to see him deposed, if you like, or in fact impeached. Would you like to see that? Or if not, what sanction would you apply?
Well, I think that impeachment, even though people may have some cause to call for it, is unlikely given the politics of the United States right now. I just don't see that that's likely to happen because the conservatives, the Republicans control the House, and the Senate is so narrowly divided.
Okay, so what would you like to happen?
I just don't see that happening.
What would you like to see happen next then to Clarence Thomas?
I think there ought to be investigations. I think I'm not saying that there's no grounds for trying to start impeachment proceedings, but I also think there ought to be some kind of sanction, and certainly there needs to be some ethical rules imposed on Supreme Court justices
and who would you like to
at
see?
long last.
And who would you like to see carry out the investigation?
Well, that's a tough question. Of course, the Senate and the House Judiciary Committees could look at this. The Chief Justice, could look at this, but I don't expect to see much happen from that quarter.
Barry Richard, Clarence Thomas then has taken numerous holidays over a 20-year period with Harlan Crow. He has sold property to him and apparently not registered it. And it seems that Ted Shaw and others would like to see him investigated and not ruling out the possibility of impeachment. What's your opinion on it?
Well, you have to separate two things. Most ethical rules for judges around the country prohibit the judges from accepting gifts from a person that has a matter affecting that person's interest before the court. I'm not aware of any that prohibit, well, I shouldn't say that. The Supreme Court doesn't have any ethical rules at all regarding this. As I understand it, Justice Thomas has said that his family and the Crow family have been personal friends for many years, and that Mr. Crow had nothing before the court, and that he would recuse himself if he did have something before the court. That being the case, he hasn't violated most ethical rules. A lot of people believe that Supreme Court justices should decline to accept any gifts anyway, because it gives the appearance of impropriety, and the public confidence in the court is so critical in a democracy. Now, as far as who can do it, only the court can do it. Congress can can have investigations in support of its impeachment authority. I don't think that this is an impeachable offense, and I don't think Congress would impeach him, but Congress can't do anything else. The only power Congress has with regard to a Supreme Court justice is impeachment. So the only body that can adopt a set of ethics rules is the Supreme Court itself. Many people, and I'm included, believe they ought to adopt it because of what I said, the importance of the public confidence and the integrity of the court.
Are you concerned by allegations that ProPublica is performing a hit job on an arch-conservative and has done nothing about, for example, the DAs that are backed in their election campaigns by, say, a liberal-leaning person like George Soros?
I have no idea what it is. I don't read the publication. I don't know what it is that they're saying. I mean, when you talk about political hit job, you're talking about political rhetoric. Many people probably conclude that that's what it is. Many people don't agree with that. The only thing I can address is whether or not I believe that Justice Thomas has violated any law or ethical provision. And at this point, as far as the facts that I've seen, I do not believe that he did. I'm not suggesting I think that it's a good idea for him to do this. I don't. I think the court should adopt its own set of ethics, as I said, and they shouldn't do this. But I don't see that he's violated anything.
Barry Richard and Ted Shaw, thank you both for your contributions to the Nexus today. Much appreciated. Well, we've mentioned the Bohemian Grove, and while some of you will be vaguely aware of it, most of you will probably have no idea what goes on there, and that is the way they like it. Somewhere down there in the dense forest of Northern California is Bohemian Grove, an exclusive retreat set over 2,700 acres. It's owned by the elite men-only Bohemian Club. You've never been there, and you probably never will. It's not for you, it's for them. Strange things have been going on at the Grove for over 150 years. Every July for 2 weeks, the elite of the elite turn up and do stuff in secret. The gathering starts with the burning of a human effigy, a ritual known as the cremation of care.
Some guy brings over something it's an effigy that's supposed to be a body, a wrapped up effigy. It's also a bunch of sticks in a blanket, but it's like shaped like a body. Yeah. And then they drop it on the fire, and they're all worshiping an owl god.
This sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's actually happening. Some of the world's richest and most influential people turn up every year and burn a human effigy in front of a massive owl. What is going on? It's hard to know because the gathering is so secretive.
But for the most part, stories about what happens in these redwoods are hard to come by. A campground statue reminds Bohemians to keep their mouths shut about the grove.
The camp is also guarded all year round by ex-military types employed by the club. It's impossible to get past security, with one or two famous exceptions. America's so-called greatest conspiracy theorist, Alex Jones, is one of them.
From there, we posed as Bohemian Club members, thus entering the inner sanctums of the New World Order. We had sheriff's deputies, Secret Service, you name it, question us on who we were. We just told them we were with the hillbillies. That's where the bushes stay.
If the conspiracy theorists are right, there's a real problem here. The rich and powerful are doing weird, sick things in a forest while working out how to run the world.
Have you been there for the ceremony with the cremation of care?
Frankly, I don't think that's something I need to talk to you about.
Really?
That's right.
Well, I'm Alex Jones, and I snuck in there in 2000.
Thank you,
ever
and goodbye.
Been in the ritual?
It's none of your damn business.
It's enticing to believe the people at Bohemian Grove are up to no good, but there is a more innocent explanation, apparently. Quite simply, the club provides a retreat for stressed-out high achievers to get together and let off a little steam. They're following in the footsteps of the club's founders and early members, actors and artists and writers, including the renowned American author Mark Twain. The club's motto, "Weaving spiders come not here," suggests no business talk is allowed. It's simply 2 weeks of fun and games, like putting on plays and lakeside talks. But even if you believe that, there are still some weird anachronistical elements. No women are allowed to be full members of the club, and no women are even allowed to work at the Grove. And no one's allowed to talk about what goes on there, and no press are invited. And so it's left to the so-called conspiracy theorists to explain or to speculate, depending on your point of view.
The world's most powerful men gather for a men's retreat inside the Grove. It's been rumored that Alan Greenspan was chosen to be nominated as the chairman of the Federal Reserve after a meeting in the Grove. And Arnold Schwarzenegger's successful bid for governor of California was given the green light by insiders in the Grove as well. And there's even a famous photo taken in 1967 showing Ronald Reagan, then governor of California, and Richard Nixon, who would be elected president the following year, sitting next to each other where they are said to have coordinated their political careers.
Okay, let's bring in our new panel now. And Peter Phillips actually attended Bohemian Grove in 1994. Even did his PhD on it. We also have Jack Latham, a photographer who didn't quite get in, but he did manage to take a few photographs nearby and has kindly agreed to share them with us. And finally, we have Jan Halper Hayes, who is a conservative political commentator who worked on Trump's 2020 campaign, and she's very concerned about what goes on at the Grove. Welcome, all of you. Peter, if I may start with you. How on earth did you get in? Were you invited by someone?
Well, I was collecting data for my dissertation. I had interviewed a number of Bohemian Club members, and I was invited. My host said you should attend, and so I went to the Spring Jinx, which is in 1994. I was there for 3 days.
And were you not sworn to secrecy? How come you're talking to us about it?
Well, they knew that I was writing my dissertation on this, and
Yes.
They were accepting of that, and he read my dissertation. He didn't particularly like my interpretations of what was going on, because I was very aware of the privacy and the eliteness of the club, but they said there was nothing incorrect about what I wrote.
The most exciting things online, when you watch people like Mark Dice or Joe Rogan or Alex Jones, are the possibilities that there is some sort of cult worship or Satanism or human sacrifices or God knows, something could be even worse perhaps. Did you witness anything like that, Peter? And if not, what was the most concerning thing for you?
I'm always concerned about power elites making decisions about what to do in the world without consulting democratically the rest of us. So that's an important thing for me. There's really no bizarre cult-like behavior going on at the Grove.
Oh, I'd like to take issue with that. Burning a human effigy in front of a giant owl, I'd say that's pretty strange by most people's standards. But I'm not saying that they're actually burning alive a human being, but still, I mean, what's the purpose of all those strange rituals?
Well, the rituals are part of like fraternity pranks. I saw the cremation of care ceremony, and There's 2,000 men sitting around the lake, and they burn care, and some of them are kind of just chuckling, and some take it fairly seriously, because what it emphasizes is that you're coming to the Grove and leaving your outside world behind,
Yes,
and joining in the fraternity of other men there, and that they see that as very almost spiritual in a sense.
well, you say that, and they're not supposed to discuss business, and yet we've heard extensively there are rumors that Alan Greenspan was chosen to be nominated there. Arnold Schwarzenegger was given the green light to go for the governorship of California. Nixon even has acknowledged that his road to the presidency probably started at the Bohemian Grove. So real things do happen there.
That's correct.
And we should be worried about that, shouldn't we? It's out of our sight, out of our ears, and the press can't get in.
Absolutely. I mean, that was my motivation, was to write about power elites in private men's clubs. And these men's clubs, of course, exist worldwide. And they're usually upper class folks that are making decisions, important decisions about what's going to happen in the world. The more we know about that, the more we recognize that, and challenge that is, I think, a very important thing.
Well, it smells very fishy to me. Jan Halper-Hayes, you're very concerned. You used to live near San Francisco, which is where the club is based. What are your greatest concerns about the Bohemian Grove meeting?
Well, it's the same as Peter. I do not like the idea of elites getting together and thinking about where our country is going to go. And that has been going on well before the Bohemian Grove even started with the Freemasons. But the other thing that happens is that they break up into teams, or I don't know what they call them, but there's about 20. They have their own groups and their regular things. So what one group does doesn't mean that all 2,000 are doing the same thing. It's very elite. It's very elite. And men actually can't wait until they move up on the waiting list and are asked to join.
Yeah. Jack Latham, probably coming towards the end of the program now. Let me ask about how you got interested in the Bohemian Grove and why you went there and took photographs and why you couldn't get inside.
So my work always kind of deals with the idea of speculation within media. And I think the thing that first drew me to Bohemian Grove is it presents itself as a vacuum of context. It's this kind of landmass that happens kind of yearly, and because there's no engagement with the press, it's kind of free reign to project any form of kind of conspiracy onto it. So the work that I made is about Bohemian Grove, but very specifically, it traces the lineage of the conspiracy theorist and host of InfoWars, Alex Jones, and how he kind of went from kind of obscurity to kind of someone that had the ear of then President-elect Donald Trump.
Okay, but you know, Alex Jones was incredibly concerned about these little dark goings on there, and to his credit, managed to break in and expose it to us and show us for the first time moving pictures of the cremation of care ceremony. Was there more heat and less light, if you like, from his report, or did some of it actually have some merit?
Well, I mean, it's interesting to bear in mind that he actually broke in with John Ronson as well, who's a British writer. And it's very interesting to see that these two men had witnessed the same ceremony, the cremation of care, and both had very different understandings of what they saw. And I think the contentious part about Alex's representations of it is there's a lot of speculation within his reporting of it. And I think that invites people into a very dangerous environment. And we saw that in 2001 when one of his avid fans broke into Bohemian Grove armed with weapons, dressed as a superhero. And we continue to see it even now, later on with things like Sandy Hook and his followers kind of harassing the victims' families.
Well, if Bohemian Grove wasn't so secretive, perhaps he wouldn't have that kind of space. Jack Latham, Jan Halper-Hayes, and Peter Phillips, thank you all so much for your contributions today. Much appreciated. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. If you want to see this episode or any of our previous episodes again, do go to our YouTube channel, type in Nexus, TRT World. Till next week then, goodbye.